Hello Art 1-2. We are going to finish up the back page of your Developing Your Theme worksheet. So on the front we brainstormed, we picked our favorite 3. From there you're going to pick your favorite, and it might be on the front. Now you're going to work on some patterns. So I have some already done, and then I'll do a couple of examples for you. So right now, we're going to write the definition of pattern. So patterns are repeating elements. So they could be line, shape, you could have a pattern of color, you could have a repeated texture that looks like a pattern. Depending on the darkness or lightness, it could be a value. So repeating elements. We're mostly going to deal with lines and shapes for our patterns here. In addition to elements, you could have an image or a picture that repeats, or a motif. And a motif is a symbol that is often used in other cultures. So an example of that is my lotus flower. That's a common image or a common motif in Eastern civilizations. All right. In addition to that, yesterday we learned about Keith Haring and his use of varied patterns. And so varied is repeated similar imagery. So the key is that it's similar but not exactly the same. We have consistent, which is repeated exactly the same. So we're going to underline same. So I did a combination so far, and I took what I brainstormed and I put it into a pattern. So I have a varied pattern of paintbrushes. They're all similar. They're all paintbrushes, not all exactly the same, going every which way, different sizes. I have a consistent pattern. This is supposed to represent books. I have a consistent pattern of little pine trees to represent the forest. I have a consistent pattern of lotus flowers, a varied pattern of Z's to represent sleep. Down here, I did a simplified tent. So I have like the standard teepee kind of tent, and then I drew part of the side, and they're going to overlap behind each other. So it could be a very simplified version of something that you brainstormed up top. And I might add into it to make it look more like a tent later on. All right, so from there, I would also think of what brings me inner peace. So perhaps for me, it's like the ability to be creative, to kind of think on my own. So perhaps I'm going to do like a thought bubble, and I'm going to make that, I can make it consistent if I want them to all be exactly the same, or maybe I want them to be kind of different going off the page. So the ability to kind of daydream, be creative, brings me inner peace. And then if you are stuck in your reference folder, in the back, we attached the line, let me find it, sorry, too far, the line and pattern packet. So remember that a pattern has to repeat. So this spiral is a motif. It's often found in many cultures, but by itself is not a pattern. So a lot of these are just images or motifs that you can use, and you have to repeat them. Some of them are a pattern, like this is a pattern. It repeats. In here, if it looks like scribbles, this is more like textures to use for later. Some of these aren't necessarily patterns, and they probably don't go with your theme. Same on this page. All right. But if I can find a pattern that I like, that I feel goes with my theme, yes, you can use it. So again, this is not a pattern because it does not repeat. So if I wanted to use that, I'd have to repeat it again and again and again. So if you find something that would bring you peace, so for me, nature brings me peace, so I could probably use this pattern. Or I love the rain, so maybe I want to use this pattern. So this might be helpful, and if you can explain how it goes with your theme, you can use it. So you might get some ideas flipping through here, or sometimes I would just Google peaceful patterns and just see what I get. Or if I wanted to legit use the peace symbol, then I would Google peace symbol patterns and kind of see what I get. So I do like the leaf one, and I would say that would probably be easier as an irregular one. So remember, I'm going to draw like basic structure first. Going up the page. Okay, then I can go back in and add in. These do not have to be totally perfect, but craftsmanship does count even in your practices, because if it looks really bad, then you're probably not going to use that in the final draft. So ultimately, you want to walk away with like 9 patterns you could use in your final draft. But looking at mine, I personally would probably find a different lotus pattern. Like I would Google lotus patterns because I don't like mine. I don't like the Z's, but I do like these other ones. So you might have to like kind of pick and choose what you actually use in your final draft. Actually, so I often use the swirl one. So that swirl by itself is not a pattern. I need to go back and add many. In order to make it a pattern. So I would finish out all of this, and so this is what is due on Tuesday or the next day after. So if you don't finish this in class, it's that stuff that starts with an H and you do at home called homework, because your next step after this is to actually draw imagery in your negative space. And then we'll divide up some of the remaining space, and then you're going to start in on your patterns. Okay, so we want to practice varied patterns. We want to practice consistent patterns. You can definitely Google and do some research and find patterns that go with your theme. Sometimes you might be able to find an image or a picture that you can turn into a pattern, which is fine. So if you do need to do some additional research, you might want to put it, and if you find something that you like the lotus flower, I had to do some research to like kind of look at it. I probably would put that in a Google Doc for myself. All right, so this is what you need to complete by the end of the period. Good luck. Work on your themed patterns.